The barking started as a low, broken warning that cut through the quiet forest like a blade, sharp and sudden, the kind of sound that made Officer Daniel Carter stop mid-step and feel the hairs on his arms rise, because Rex never barked like that without a reason, and certainly never at trees, especially not at an old oak standing alone near the edge of the abandoned park, its trunk twisted with age and scarred by time, bearing a huge unnatural lump that looked like a wound the earth itself had tried and failed to heal, and as Rex circled it frantically, claws digging into damp soil, barking with urgency that bordered on fear, Daniel felt a cold pressure settle in his chest, the instinct that had saved his life more than once whispering that something here was terribly wrong. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and hidden truths waiting to be uncovered, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this remind us that hope can be buried in the most unexpected places. Daniel Carter had been on the force for nearly 15 years, long enough to recognize the quiet decay of forgotten places and the way pain could linger where no one bothered to look anymore, and this patrol was supposed to be routine, just another sweep through land scheduled for redevelopment, but Rex had been restless from the moment they arrived, nose low, body tense, as if the past itself was breathing beneath the leaves, and Daniel, already weighed down by his own silent grief after losing his wife Emily to a sudden illness 2 years earlier, felt the familiar ache of loneliness tighten around his heart as he followed his partner toward the tree, his boots sinking slightly into the soft ground, the air thick with the smell of moss and rain-soaked bark. Rex's barking intensified, echoing off the surrounding trees, his body pressed close to the lump, teeth bared not in aggression but in desperate insistence, and Daniel placed a calming hand on his back, whispering comfort without words, his mind racing through possibilities, illegal dumping, animal remains, maybe nothing at all, yet something about the size and shape of the growth made his stomach churn, because it wasn't natural, it was too deliberate, too carefully concealed. The lump bulged from the oak's trunk like a tumor, its surface hardened and darkened as if the tree had grown around it over many years, and Daniel ran his gloved fingers across it, feeling the uneven texture, the subtle give beneath the bark, his pulse pounding louder with every second, because Rex would not let this go, and Rex had never been wrong before, not when he'd found missing children, not when he'd tracked suspects through storms, not even when he'd led Daniel to a trapped hiker deep in the mountains months after Emily's death, a moment that had nearly broken Daniel open with gratitude and grief all at once. The officer radioed for permission to investigate further, but as he waited, Rex began scratching at the base of the tree, dirt flying, nails scraping against wood, barking turning into a mournful howl that carried something deeper than alert, something that sounded almost like sorrow, and that sound cracked something inside Daniel, because he recognized it, the sound of a soul begging not to be ignored. With approval granted and hands shaking more than he wanted to admit, Daniel retrieved a small saw and cutting tools from the patrol vehicle, the forest around him unnervingly still as if holding its breath, and when he pressed the blade into the hardened bark surrounding the lump, resistance gave way far too easily, the wood brittle and hollow, flakes falling away to reveal layers that had grown over. Something foreign, something hidden on purpose, and as he cut deeper, the smell changed, no longer just earth and decay but something stale and human, a scent that made his throat tighten and his eyes sting. Rex stopped barking suddenly and stood frozen, ears forward, eyes locked on the opening, his body trembling, and Daniel's hands slowed, every instinct screaming for him to stop and call for backup, yet something stronger pushed him on, a sense that this discovery mattered, that it was calling out to him personally, as if fate had chosen this moment, this tree, this broken officer and his loyal dog, to finally tell a story that had been silenced for far too long. When the bark finally fell away, Daniel froze in shock, his breath catching painfully in his chest as he stared into the hollowed space, because inside was not what he had expected, not an animal nest or discarded object, but a small, weathered wooden box wrapped in layers of rotted cloth, tucked carefully into the tree as if someone had wanted to protect it from the world, and his knees nearly gave out as he reached inside and pulled it free, the box heavier than it looked, its surface etched with faint markings barely visible beneath years of growth. Rex whimpered softly, pressing his head against Daniel's leg, grounding him as the officer opened the box with trembling fingers, and inside lay a bundle of faded papers, a child's shoe, and a rusted locket containing a tiny photograph of a young woman holding a baby, both smiling in a way that felt painfully intimate, heartbreakingly alive, as if they were still waiting to be found. The realization hit Daniel slowly and then all at once, crashing over him with crushing force. because this was evidence, not of a crime that had just happened, but of one that had been buried, literally and figuratively, for decades, a missing person case that had gone cold before Daniel had even joined the force, a young mother named Sarah Mitchell and her infant son who had vanished without a trace, their disappearance fading into rumor and regret as years passed and hope dwindled, and here, inside a tree that had silently grown around their memory, lay the truth someone had tried desperately to hide. Daniel sank to the ground, box clutched to his chest, tears blurring his vision as the weight of it all settled in, the cruelty of a world where lives could be erased so easily, and the strange, overwhelming beauty of the fact that they had finally been seen, finally been remembered, because one dog refused to stop barking. The investigation that followed unraveled a long-forgotten nightmare, a story of abuse, fear, and a desperate attempt by Sarah to leave someone dangerous, evidence linking the items in the box to a man who had since died, his secrets sealed until now, and as the truth emerged, so did a sense of justice that felt both bitter and healing, closure arriving too late to save lives but just in time to restore dignity, to give names back to bones and stories back to souls. Daniel attended the memorial service weeks later, standing beside Rex as flowers were laid beneath the oak tree, now marked with a plaque bearing Sarah and her son's names, the sun filtering through branches that no longer felt ominous but protective, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt something inside him loosen, a knot he hadn't realized he was still carrying, because he understood now that even after unimaginable loss, there was still purpose, still meaning in showing up, in listening, in trusting the quiet voices that refused to be silenced. As Daniel drove home that evening, Rex resting peacefully in the back seat, the officer glanced at the locket now sealed in an evidence bag, knowing he would never forget the moment that tree had opened and changed everything, knowing that Emily's absence still hurt but didn't hollow him out the way it once had, because he had seen proof that love could endure even when buried, that truth had roots deeper than lies, and that sometimes, healing began not with answers, but with the courage to look closer when something didn't feel right. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in the quiet power of loyalty, compassion, and persistence, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe, because your support helps stories like this reach others who might need hope today. And before this story ends, please comment below and tell us what this moment made you feel, because your words matter more than you know. And as the camera fades on the old oak standing tall against the sky, no longer hiding a secret but honoring a memory, we are reminded that even the deepest wounds can become places of truth, and sometimes all it takes to change everything is a bark that refuses to be ignored.